Okay, public receipt, RECEIPT. Okay, today I'm not using any PPT. I'll just discuss these things. In fact, if you are following my YouTube channel, I had already taken a lecture on this somewhere else. You may refer to that, but we can discuss actually whatever confusion if arises at all. Okay, so we should use the word receipt, not revenue. Why I am saying this? Anything that comes to the government in any form, okay, particularly, of course, we are talking about the financial resources here, that will be called as receipt. Okay, and this receipt could be of two types. One could be revenue receipt, and other could be the capital receipt. Okay, so but if we tell the word revenue, then there will be confusion. Okay, that then what is revenue, what is receipt, all those things will come up. So better we use the term receipt, and whatever income actually that accrues to the government is basically called as receipt. And government can mobilize all these receipts in two ways. One is that it could be revenue receipt and it could be capital receipts. Okay, let me ask you, since you are all tax officers and you have already interacted with the finance department, uh, have you already gone through this syllabus? Has someone taught you all these things? Sources of receipt for the union government and sources of receipt for the state government. Can someone unmute and tell me? John Major Dalai.
Yes, sir.
Sir,
So, yes, sir. They are.
Yeah, Rajendra Narayan Senapati, you were telling something. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, sir. They have said, but there's not much details about
Okay,
that as well.
fine. Okay, so anyways, I'll discuss in details. So we know that okay, government has to spend quite a lot of money, and for that government requires money, and so our basically income. If government has income, then only it can spend money, it can incur expenditure, and all the money that accrues to the government is called as receipt. And this receipt could be of two types: revenue receipt and capital receipt. Now, what is the revenue receipt and how it is different from capital receipt? When we say revenue receipt, basically it refers to the receipts that are recurring in nature, reoccurs. Okay, so recurring in nature, it comes again and again. Okay, and we can take examples. It could be tax. Okay, government can impose tax, and that can be imposed every day. If you are collecting GST, then it can be collected almost every day. So that's why it reoccurs. It's recurring in nature. Similarly, fines and fees, or basically we can say the non-tax receipts, okay, that such as fines. Okay, say to avail any public service, we have to pay a fee. Okay, and so for example, when the state, when we go to school, we have to pay a fee, or when you go to college, you have to pay a fee. Similarly, when you go to court, or you have to do registration, a plant, you have to pay a fee, stamp fee, and different fees are there. So we have to pay a fee. These are all non-tax receipts, revenue receipts. Okay, so the receipts that are recurring in nature are called as the revenue receipts. Then the other source of receipt is the capital receipt. Now, what is capital receipt? Basically, it is non-recurring in nature. No, it comes in once in a while, and those are basically borrowings. Okay? And government, if wants, can borrow, or if it doesn't want, it did not borrow. Okay? So, and borrowing, of course, borrowing is done. Sometimes you can say that no, it is done quite frequently also, borrowing. Okay? But it is up to the government whether they will borrow or not. Even without borrowing also, if the government has a lot of revenue or other sources of income, then that can continue. Okay? And So that is the key difference, that the receipts that are recurring in nature are revenue receipts, and the receipts that are non-recurring in nature are basically the capital receipts. We shall discuss in details what all things are coming under the revenue receipts and what all uh, uh, things are coming under the capital receipts. I'm sure you all might have gone through a budget document, a budget of Government of India and budget of Odisha government. Have you all gone through a budget document? Have you all seen budget?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, yeah.
Yes, sir.
So
Yes, sir.
that would only clarify your doubts. Otherwise, unless you see that, public finance concepts cannot be understood properly. So one has to open the budget and then realize, okay, that these are the things written in the budget, and then seeing is believing. Okay? Otherwise, you cannot trust. Let me check whether I can share that page with all of you. Okay. Receipt budget. Yes, I think I can share. That would be better. Yes. So can you all see this now? I'm sharing the
Yes, sir.
abstract. Yes.
Yes, sir.
Receipts. Yes. So this is the budget of Government of India for the year 2021, and this is the abstract of the receipts. And we are discussing. I told you that whatever income comes to the government will be basically called as receipts, and these are two types: revenue receipts and other is capital receipts. And revenue receipts are basically recurring in nature, and capital receipts are non-recurring in nature. Now, within revenue receipts, we have tax revenue receipts and we have non-tax revenue receipts. Okay, and then within tax. Okay, so then what is a tax revenue receipt and how it is different from non-tax revenue receipts? In fact, sometimes particularly when you talk to lay persons, they basically mix up these two terms, tax and non-tax receipts. Say, for example, we say toll tax. Okay? Toll is never a tax, okay? Because if you do not want to use that road, no one can impose a tax on you. You can always avoid. Okay? You can say, for example, when you go from, say, Bhubaneswar to Berhampur. Why I'm telling this, because my home is that side. So you can find a toll gate before Jankia or just after Malipada. That is Godipada toll. Okay, and suppose you do not want to pay that toll, you can go on a bike. That is one option. Don't drive car, okay, and you can go on bike, so you can save that. And similarly, if you do not want to go on national highway, you can go enter into the village and cross that toll some other way, so you can escape that. Okay, so if you do not want to pay that, no one will impose, and no one will also arrest you, okay, because you are going on a cycle or a bike. Okay, and so you can always avoid that. So toll is never a tax. Now, what is a tax? Tax is a compulsory payment, okay, by the citizen of a country without any direct quid pro quo. Okay, that it's a compulsory payment. You have to pay this if you are eligible, of course, because all citizens are not eligible to pay tax. So if you are not coming under the income tax category, then you don't have to pay tax. So that, although it's said as a compulsory payment, you have to be eligible, and government has basically made that rule that people who have income up to a certain limit, and that limit changes from time to time, they're exempted from income. Okay? So otherwise, you'll be bound to pay tax. And in fact, if you go back in the history, particularly when the British ruled us, when the Mughals ruled us, or when the kings ruled us in India, there used to be different tax, and land tax used to be the major source of receipt for the kings and the Mughals and then the British. That was a major source, and that was a compulsory payment. If you are holding some land, you have to pay the tax. Okay? So that was the system, but now land is definitely not a major source of tax. And if you are earning some income, if you are earning beyond a limit, you have to pay tax. So it is a compulsory payment made. So tax is a compulsory payment made by the citizen of a country without any direct quid, QUID, quid pro quo. That means you do not expect anything directly in return. When you are paying 100 rupees tax, you do not expect anything directly from the government. Government is definitely giving you, and you have definitely indirect expectation that when you are paying tax, you expect that government will provide us different public goods and services. But you cannot say that I am paying more tax, that is why I will receive more benefits from the government. That is not permissible. Okay, but in case of a non-tax or a fine or a fee, since you are enjoying that service, you have to pay the fee. So there is a direct quid pro quo. That means you are paying say electricity bill, and that's why you are enjoying more electricity. You are paying the toll, and that's why you are riding a car on that road. Okay, so and similarly, you are buying a land, and that's why you are paying a fee, registration fee. If you don't buy land, you don't pay the fee. So there is a direct quid pro quo involved in case of non-tax receipts. Okay, but in case of tax, that is actually there is no direct quid pro quo. You may pay higher tax, and you may not get public services in proportion to your tax. But on the other hand, an individual who does not pay any tax might get a lot of public services. Okay, so there is no direct quid pro quo, and in fact, there is a negative tax in case of the poor people, because the people who have more income, they have a positive tax, and that is transferred to the poor people. So you can say that there is a negative tax, okay, on the poor people. Okay, so, or you can say basically that subsidy is a transfer from the rich to the poor. So sometimes people use this term also, negative tax, okay, or basically it is a subsidy. So we discussed that receipt. Under that we have revenue receipt, capital receipt. Within receipt we have tax revenue, and we have non-tax revenue. And tax is a compulsory payment where, and there is a direct quid pro quo involved. But in case of non-tax revenue, there is no direct quid pro quo involved, and it is not a compulsory payment. If you do not enter the service, you don't have to pay the tax. If you do not enter into park, you don't have to pay a fee. So that's how that's the difference between a tax receipt and tax revenue receipt and non-tax revenue receipt. Now, within tax revenue receipts, we have two types of taxes. We have direct taxes, we have indirect taxes. And in case of direct tax, it is basically the person who is legally liable pays the tax directly. Okay? And so it is a direct tax. Or we can say that if we use economics jargon, then it is the tax incidence and the burden are on the same person. That means if it is income tax, then say Mr. X is liable to pay the tax, and Mr. X has to pay the tax only. She cannot transfer this to anybody else. So the incidence is on X, and Mr. X also carries the burden. But in case of indirect tax, the tax is imposed on somebody, but the burden is carried by somebody else. Okay? So that is indirect tax. In case of a commodity tax, you basically, we have discussed in some other class that if you are going to a beauty parlor, then the beauty parlor is legally liable to pay the tax to the government, but the beauty parlor owner never pays the tax. Okay? The beauty parlor owner transfers this burden to the person who wants to beautify himself or herself. Okay, so that's how this is. So the incidence is on somebody, and the burden is on somebody. That is indirect tax. And so within tax revenue, we have two taxes: direct tax and indirect tax. And then coming to the direct tax, we had actually three type of direct taxes in the past. One is the individual income tax, the second is the corporation tax, and the wealth tax. Here you can see that that is the case of the government of India. But if you come to the state governments, it would be different. The state governments have very limited direct taxes, and for the states it would be land revenue, and then professional tax. So those two things actually would be the direct taxes. Okay, and yeah, these are the major things. And but in case of Government of India, it is the individual income tax, or you can say the income tax, or the corporation tax, and the wealth tax. But wealth tax has been now abolished. We do not have wealth tax. I think it was abolished in the year 2014-15, and but you see some numbers even in 2018-19, because that could be basically the arrears collected in subsequent years. So wealth tax doesn't exist now. Government has imposed a surcharge on the rich people, and government believes that wealth tax is complicated, and then the administrative expenditure is more than what we are able to realize from the wealth tax. That's why it was abolished, and we basically have now imposed a surcharge. We have moved towards a surcharge. So at present, we can say that there are two direct taxes. One is the individual income tax, and other is the corporate income tax, or the corporation tax and income tax. In simple terms, we use these two terminologies. Now coming to the indirect tax, we have a couple of indirect taxes. You can come from the border. One is custom duty. Okay, that when you are doing a trade between different countries, either you are exporting or importing, you have to pay a custom duty. Okay? It could be on export or it could be on import. So that is the first one. So we are coming from the boundary, and then once you are within the country, you might be producing something. Okay? And then that could be, if so, if a tax is imposed on the production, then it is called as the union excise. Okay? And then if it is sold and a tax is imposed, then it is sales tax, and that is collected by the state government. Okay? And we are discussing the case of the union government. That is why we are discussing union excise. Now, union excise is still continuing. You know, you may think that now there is GST, but how come union excise is continuing? We know that the petroleum products are still not coming under GST, and that is a major source of revenue. Similarly, motor spirit, those are not those are not direct meant for human consumption, and that also Government of India imposes the union excise duty. So anything actually, any tax that is imposed on the production by the union government, and you should also remember that union government always imposes a tax on the production, and the state government imposes a tax on the sales. That is the key difference. The nature of tax could be different. Okay? It could be, in different forms. The present form of union excise is basically the GST, goods and services tax, and but before that we had value added tax, and before that we had modified value added tax, and prior to modified value added tax we had ad valorem tax, and before ad valorem tax we had the unit tax or specific tax. I think we have discussed in some other class probably. You know the difference between all these terms that I told. In the beginning we had a unit tax or specific tax, and then we moved towards uh, an ad valorem tax, and then we moved towards modified value added tax, and then value added tax, and then now we have GST. Okay, uh, you are all clear on those concepts, or I should explain? Somebody can tell me. Ashutosh Matari.
Yes, sir.
You know this, right?
Yes, I know this,
Yeah.
sir.
Okay. So now we have GST, and we have central GST, we have state GST, and we have IGST, that is integrated GST. So that actually, we well known that how GST is basically an attempt to unify those things, but we still see that there are some numbers available in under the service tax head, and then we have some tax under union excise duty, and then we have goods and services tax. And other than that, also all the taxes collected by the union territories are also the part of the receipts of the union government. I'm repeating that, this budget is this receipt is basically for the union government. For the states, it would be completely different. Okay, so basically, under tax revenue, we discussed that there are direct taxes and there are indirect taxes, and indirect taxes and direct taxes, I have told the differences. The nature is completely different in these two. And then here actually we see that transfer to the national calamity contingency, that actually we shall discuss at the end if some confusion arises. But let us focus on the receipt part only, that how the union government mobilizes the receipt for itself. Now, then the second part is, okay, again quickly, receipt, we have tax and we have revenue receipt, capital receipt. Within revenue receipt, we had tax revenue and non-tax. Now we discuss the tax, within which you have direct tax and indirect tax. Now we are discussing the non-tax revenue. Now within non-tax revenue, we have interest payments, then we have dividends and profits, and then other non-tax revenue, which are basically fines and fees. Okay, you see a very big number actually under other non-tax revenue. Those are basically the fines and fees that we pay for availing different services from the government of India, and all the receipts that come under the non-tax receipt from the union territories. So those are actually non-tax revenue. And you see that in the past, the dividends or profits are still higher because you had so many public sector undertakings, and gradually now we are selling off many public sector undertakings, and many PSUs are also now incurring loss. So that's how government is trying to sell out all these things, and that's how this amount is now reducing. Okay? And but still, of course, we have Maharatnas and Navaratnas that will make a lot of profit, okay? And that is still, and RBI also gives profit to the government of India. So all those things will come under dividend and profits. And interest payment. Interest payment, in fact, in the past, again, government of India used to get a lot of interest because government of India used to give loan to the state governments. But nowadays, government of India is not actually giving loans to the state governments, or you can say that the amount has significantly gone down, particularly after the 11th Finance Commission recommendation. Okay, of course, we can say that that was implemented later in case of 12th Finance Commission and 13th Finance Commission. But and after that, after 13th Finance Commission, you see that the loans given by the union government to the state government has gone down significantly. So now, whenever you see that there is an interest payment that actually government of India is getting, that would be basically going to the public sector undertakings, and of course, in some cases also state governments take some loan, but that is very minimum. Okay? And so now major source is dividend and profit, and of course other non-tax revenues. In the latest year, you see that other non-tax revenue, that those fines and fees are basically constituting a major part of the non-tax revenue. So that is the basically constituting the non-tax revenue. We have tax revenue and non-tax revenue. So that is all about your revenue receipts. Okay? And then the other part is your capital receipts. And capital receipts, I told you that these are non-recurring in nature. So it may come once in a while. Okay? And it depends on the government's requirement. And now coming to the capital receipts, we have two types of capital receipts. One is debt capital receipt and other is non-debt capital receipts. Or simply you can say that it is the borrowing and non-borrowing capital receipts. Okay, so debt capital receipts and non-debt capital receipts. Now we'll start with non-debt capital receipts, and non-debt capital receipts are recoveries of loans and advances. So remember one difference here, that if government of India gives loan to somebody, when that is collected back, then the interest amount goes to the non-tax revenue, but the principal amount comes to the capital receipts. So that is the difference one should remember, that the principal repaid by somebody is coming under the capital receipt, but the interest is accounted under the non-tax revenue receipts. So the recovery and loans and advances are coming under the non-debt capital receipts. And then other non-debt capital receipts are, it is written miscellaneous. and mostly it is disinvestment proceeds that the government can sell the public sector undertakings or divest the public sector undertakings. That means it can dilute some share of some companies, and that's how it can mobilize revenue. And you must be observing that in recent past, government is giving too much emphasis on the privatization or disinvestment of the public sector undertakings, particularly Coal India Limited. Now we are going to again divest railway sector and railways, and similarly even in other sectors like we have Gas Authority of India Limited, Steel Authority of India Limited, we have Bharat Heavy Electronic Limited. No, you all can buy shares of those companies. You can sell, you can buy a share of Nalco. Okay, so that means it is not only the government who is owning these companies. Rather, now government is diluting. In fact, very recently only many of these companies were enlisted in the stock exchange. Before that, it was fully owned by the government, and that was basically done to no, basically it's a gradual privatization of the public sector undertakings. Of course, whether it is good or bad, that has ideological position. Some people may argue that government's focus should be on the public goods. So government should not really worry about the private goods, and production of steel, production of gas, production of say railway services. Some people may treat these as the pure private goods, and there would not be any merit actually for the government to provide. And you all know that when government tries to do so many things at a time, it will also become inefficient. Okay? Because government also has limited capacity; it cannot do everything. Okay? Although we believe that government is omnipotent, it can do everything, okay, very efficiently. That is not really true. Okay? So that is why there is ideological position involved here, that how much what should be the size of the government, whether government should do everything or the government should do minimum things but most efficiently. Yeah, so we can say that when you do the disinvestment, and the receipts that you get from disinvestment will come under the capital receipts. In case of states, let me tell you here that some state governments sometimes try to sell land, okay, and get revenue and put it under the capital receipts. Okay, that would be non-debt capital receipts. But remember, no, if you are following the Puri issue, that somebody had donated some land to some ashram, okay, for some ashram, and then now Puri administration is basically trying to sell that land and give it to somebody else. So that's how that time many people raised a voice against it. They said that government cannot sell the land. Okay? Government can only lease out land to somebody. Government cannot sell land. That ideological position no continues, but no, I am aware also that in many other states they sell the land completely to some private party, and get the money. So, and they put it under the non-debt capital receipts. Okay? Because land is the capital that belong to the government, and if it is selling, then it can happen only once. Okay? So that's how it is non-recurring in nature, and that's how that can be put under the non-debt capital receipt. But definitely, in case of state governments, you will find the non-debt capital receipts are very, 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 very low, and the loan, that is debt capital receipt, is very, very high. And then recovery of loans and advances depends how much you had given in the past, so that they can recollect. Okay, so that is non-debt capital receipts. We have recovery of loans and advances and miscellaneous capital receipts, of which the major part is basically the disinvestment proceeds. Now, next one is the debt capital receipt. What is debt capital receipt? Okay, that basically you are borrowing from the market. Yeah, of course, there are different sources of borrowing, and here we see that okay, borrowing could be made from two sources, major sources we can say. One is that you borrow from internal sources, or you borrow from the external sources. Okay, and so if you look at the external sources, basically you can borrow from say World Bank, or you can borrow directly from some development agencies like Asian Development Bank, or you can borrow from JICA. Different agencies are there, USAID, and then we had DFID. So those are basically the development agencies of some countries. You can directly borrow from countries. But in India, you observe that in the recent years, in the last more than a decade, the external borrowing has gone down significantly, and that is a good indicator. Because when you borrow from the other countries or from multilateral development agencies such as World Bank or Asian Development Bank, or say now we are having a BRICS Bank. Okay? The headquarter is in China. We actually may have to pay in foreign exchange. Okay? That is why external borrowing is not a very good idea. Okay? That creates a lot of liability for the government that may lead to a bankruptcy situation. But India actually now is trying to reduce this, and this is a good indicator also. In fact, I should also tell you that in non-tax receipt, we can also keep all the foreign aid actually that we get from different other multilateral. Okay, so and that grant also to government of India is also declined significantly. And okay, so then under grant also, the aid is grant from different foreign countries is declining to India, because now many people are considering that India is no more a poor, least developed country, and after basically when India sent the MOM, that is Mars orbiter mission, and that was successful. After that, many developed countries become curious that India has money to send MOM to Mars, but they don't have money to feed their people. Like say Melinda Gates Foundation, DFID, they all have reduced the grants significantly to India, and I think this is for a good reason only. And in fact, on the other hand, you must be observing that India is nowadays giving a lot of foreign aid to other countries, and you know that aid is basically about diplomacy. Foreign aid is basically about diplomacy. You want to have some favorable opinion in some other country, so you give some aid. And you know that in South Asia, India also tries to give some money to our neighboring countries, and so that is all about diplomacy. Okay? That India gives loan to Africa, India gives loan or grant to Afghanistan, it gives to Sri Lanka, it gives to Maldives, it gives to Nepal. Okay? And so that is more about diplomacy. In fact, in economics, we discuss a lot of theories on it also, whether aid has a charitable motive or not. Okay? When you receive aid from somebody, it is not simple that you must be thinking. Okay? It has a lot of politics behind it. Okay? So that is when the aid amount is declining. That is also a good sign, and we can, in fact, remember for academicians, it has significant implications. The scholarships for Indian students have also declined significantly. Okay? Earlier days, when you went abroad for doing higher studies, many Indians used to get scholarship because okay, they thought that okay, Indians are poor or they belong to this poor category. But nowadays they say that no, you have all become rich. Actually, you are sending MOM to Mars. Now you are also trying Chandrayaan and all these things you are doing. That means you have a lot of money. So why should we give scholarship to all of you? Now you spend your own money and come. Similarly, when you go to conference, the registration fee is also different. Now, if you are from a rich country, your registration fee is different. If you are from least developed country, your registration fee is different. Okay, so that has again many implications when your status is changed from rich to poor, poor to rich, from LDC to middle income and rich country. Of course, we are not yet actually the rich country. We are coming under the middle income category. Okay, so the point was that now the India's dependency on foreign loan or external loan has gone down drastically. In fact, it was probably in the year 2000 that a time period actually 2003 to 2007. That was the time period during which India repaid quite a lot of foreign external debt. Before 2003, we had a lot of external borrowing, and that time actually during 2003-4, we had a surplus, in current account, and that was used actually basically to repay the external debt. And after that, India has always tried to limit the external borrowing, and it tries to mobilize the revenue from its own sources, from domestic sources. So now coming to the domestic borrowing or internal borrowing, there are multiple sources. And nowadays, since Indian capital market has developed quite a lot compared to the past, of course, compared to many other advanced countries, our capital market is not that mature, but still compared to our past, it has definitely developed quite a lot. And that's why government of India is able to mobilize a lot of money from the market. Coming to the internal borrowing, there could be two major sources. One is that it can ask the Reserve Bank to print money. Okay, so that we call as monetization of the deficit. Okay, that whatever deficit is there, Government of India can always ask the RBI to print. Okay, that is easy source. But I have told you also when I was teaching RBI, the functions of RBI. In fact, after 1993, RBI and Government of India, they have basically made an agreement or commitment that Government of India cannot no, ask RBI to print unlimited money, or unlimited monetization of the deficit is no more seen as a good thing. Okay, that's how there is a limit. And after that also we have now FRBM, Fiscal Responsibility and Budget Management Act, under which also there is a limit for the Government of India to borrow. So automatic monetization of the deficit is not possible easily nowadays. Now options are that it can go to market actually for borrowing. Of course, RBI will facilitate that. When the finance minister needs money, finance minister doesn't go to market. He has appointed RBI governor basically to do that on behalf of the minister. So government will borrow, RBI will borrow for the government, and so we see that market loans for repayment, market loans for buyback, market loans for switching. Okay, so there are different options. Basically, you had borrowed in the past more money, and that had higher rate of interest. Now you have to repay that because that has matured. So you take a fresh loan to repay that. Okay, so and you know that interest rate always falls. Okay, and government can say that no, we are taking a fresh loan with a lower rate of interest and we repay the previous loan. So market loans, that's why you see that market loans for repayments, market loans for buyback, market loans for switching, and then less payments for switching. So these are basically, we see that market loans, gross 1 plus 2 plus 3. Okay? And then comes short-term treasury bills borrowing. Those are short-term in nature. And you know that for Government of India also, the major sources are basically, it borrows from LIC, okay? And of course, state governments borrow from NABARD. But for Government of India, it can borrow from the LIC. And the major source also is Public Provident Fund, PPF. Okay, that is the major source, and that is the best option for the government of India, because all the government, central government employees, contribute quite a lot of money, okay, for their public provident fund. Nowadays, it is NPS, and government always knows that, say there are 100 employees who are working with the Government of India. Every year, only few people will be retiring. Okay, so it knows that actually how many people will be retiring. So it can always safely use the money who are already working. So all the provident fund, of course, provident fund is managed by again Government of India, and but since the money belongs to the people, government can only borrow from that. And probably I think we have discussed somewhere else that budget has three accounts. One is the consolidated fund, and then other is we have the contingency fund, and then we have public accounts. So you know that all this money of people goes to the public account. Then for meeting the emergency situation, we have a contingency fund and we have a consolidated fund. And to spend any money, we need a voting or a approval in the parliament for the government of India. And if it is state government, we need approval in the legislative assembly. So that's how we can only spend money from the consolidated fund after getting the approval. So that's how actually we can say that. So under debt receipts, you have either you borrow from market or you borrow from the RBI, that is actually treasury bills, and then you can borrow from external sources. So basically, we divide the debt receipts into external and internal. Within external, we have different sources, multiple agencies, and similarly within internal borrowing, we have the monetization of the deficit, that is from Reserve Bank, or you can borrow from market, or you can borrow from the public provident funds or LIC. So that is actually all about the capital receipt. So these are actually the major sources. Now, people may think that which one is better. Some people may think that which source of receipt is good for the government, whether it is the tax revenue, or it is non-tax, or it is borrowing, which is actually good. Definitely, it is the tax that is always a good thing. But in India, we know that there are a lot of political economy issues involved in imposition of tax, and that's why India's tax GST ratio is one of the lowest in advanced. If you compare to many other developed countries, it is one of the lowest. Okay? And many advanced countries have almost 40 to 50%. Even some countries have 60% tax GDP ratio, but India has hardly 18% tax GDP ratio. So it is very, very low, and that is also the reason why our public sector is also very, very small. Basically, I am referring in terms of the number of employees, number of government employees per lakh population. It is also one of the lowest in the world, and because you do not pay tax. And why the tax is quite low in India? There are many reasons. The first reason is that we have a very big unorganized unorganized sector, because in unorganized sector, it is very difficult to catch people, or people basically to know what is their real income, and then you cannot pay tax. You cannot collect tax. Again, between direct tax and indirect tax, which one is good? Definitely direct tax is good. It's better than the indirect tax, because indirect tax is a regressive tax, because it imposes equal burden on the rich and poor people. In fact, we have discussed in the past optimal taxation. When I was discussing the scope of public finance, I have told you that optimal tax basically says that the inelastic goods should be taxed more, okay? And elastic goods should be taxed less. That means that burden will be more on the poor people if you follow that principle of optimal taxation. So so in fact, in advanced countries, they impose quite a lot of tax on the inheritance. Okay, or basically we can say wealth tax. And why that is a good tax, and that also can mobilize a lot of revenue. But that is the only way we can reduce the inequality. See, for example, we are saying that it's a democratic country and everyone has equal opportunity. And it is written in a preamble. But if you do not impose an inheritance tax or a wealth tax, then your opportunity is never equal. Okay? Because if somebody is inheriting a lot of wealth from his or her father or parents, then where is equality of opportunity? But if we impose a heavy inheritance tax, that if you might have or say our father might have crores of rupees, but when he transfers to his or her children, then the children have to pay a lot of tax. Then only you can get that. So that way, what you are doing, you are reducing level of inequality. But in India, that does not exist. That's how you see that a lot of basically the rich kids become even much richer, or no, not much, they become richer, and the poor people, their endowment actually is less, and that's so they are not able to move ahead in their life. And that is also the reason why you will find in advanced countries, many rich people, do a lot of charity, okay? And they open different foundations, and they donate to different universities. They create a lot of endowment and appoint professors. You will find Samartha Sen endowment professor. Similarly, say Ratan Tata actually has also done in London School of Economics. They have given a scholarship, so they have given a lot of money, and with that proceeds, they do. But in advanced countries, basically people do this because if you try to transfer your money to your next generation, you have to pay a lot of inheritance tax. That is one reason. And the second also, that in advanced countries, the family institution is also quite weak. Okay, so every individual actually tries to create his or her own fate. So ideally, actually, government of India should increase the direct tax, and it should impose actually inheritance tax. In fact, Prabhat Patnaik in one lecture was telling that every individual in this country should have at least 4 or 5 entitlements, basically rights. One is right to income, and the right to employment. No, one is right to employment, which basically will ensure your income. And if you do not get employment, if the nation fails to provide you employment, nation should give you unemployment allowance. Then second is you should have free education. We should have free education. We should have good health care. Okay, these are all free. This should be all freely available. Then right to food. So one is right to employment. Right, first should be right to food. Okay, and once you get food, then it comes employment, and then comes your education, and then comes your health. Okay, and the old age pension. Okay, so that's what these are 5 things should be fundamental right of every individual in this country. Now, many people will question, how is it possible if you want to provide all these things to people? Do we have money? Then Prabhat Patnaik and many economists also provide this answer that yes, we can mobilize this much money. If you impose an inheritance tax of 10% on the rich people, then you can easily finance all these things. And so if everyone gets this, then actually we provide us equal opportunity. Now in India, we do not have equal opportunity actually, because we first of all do not impose tax, and you see that income tax is also not very high actually. Of course, for people like you and me, the tax that we are paying is definitely high, but there are people who are earning in crores. So for them, it is 30%. Of course, they are paying a little bit surcharge, but again, that is not that high. But if you will be a citizen in an advanced country, then you will pay significant, higher amount of tax. So at least in that regard, we are very weak. And in case of indirect tax, the problem that we are facing is basically a lot of leakage. And we know that we have intelligence showing in the tax department, and that intelligence showing, first of all, there is understaff. There are very many vacancies existing in that department. And then technology also we have to upgrade. If you can upgrade the technology, then you can easily catch so many other people. Of course, we are moving in that direction. Jam Trinity, Jamdhan, Aadhaar, and Mobile Trinity. We are using that technology to catch the tax evaders. But we have to go a long way in that direction. And then and there is also corruption. That issue is still persisting, that many people in that intelligence wing are also in hands in glove with the tax evaders. In the recent days, actually, you all have heard that how GST frauds are happening. Okay? In media, these are also coming up. So we have to go a long way actually in that direction. If once our economy becomes formalized, we will be able to generate more and more taxes. But ideal tax should be more and more direct taxes, and less indirect taxes. And non-tax revenue, other things actually can become actually quite low. Okay, so in fact, you would remember actually when Prime Minister Modi actually came to power, That time, all the discussion that was going on was that, if you can get all the black money from the other countries like Switzerland and many other countries, then probably Subramaniam or Subramaniam was telling that we government did not even tax anybody. Okay? You can simply relax the tax. You get all that black money. So what is this black money we are talking about? That is the money people earn without paying the tax. That is basically the black money. Okay? So it could be by anybody actually. It could be by rich people. It could be by the middle class who are doing business. And we have discussed also in some other lecture that it comes in different parts. Yeah, so that's all. Public revenue, all about. Yeah, if there is any other question, you can ask me. Actually, I have another meeting. So at 4 o'clock, let's say, yeah, but still 3-4 minutes, I can discuss if there is any question. Otherwise, I will stop. Yeah. Or any comments you if you would like to make? You have 3 minutes. If you want to get a trend, like what was the pattern, like how much revenue government of India collected in the past, all of you should go through the document India Public Finance Statistics. Have you all seen that document?
No, sir.
No, sir.
No? Okay. So today, after this lecture, all of you do a Google search, India Public Finance Statistics. That gives you the information about like what was the tax collection of government of India, what was the revenue deficit in 1950s, okay, and how this deficit has changed, whether there was surplus in the past, and how much money center transfers to the states. So all these things, all these information are available systematically in India Public Finance Statistics. Just make a Google search, you will get it. This is available in the Ministry of Finance, Government of India website. And if somebody is really interested to know this, I understand that see, our finance secretary also wants a lot of smart people around him who can do a little bit of research and support him. These things are basically required when basically when the finance department has to submit a demand for grants to government of India. Unless you know actually the pattern, you'll not be able to provide a document. See, you should not be simple officer who is only collecting taxes from the people. Your responsibilities can be much more, like how to help government of Odisha to get more and more revenue from the government of India. Okay, how Odisha government will get more revenue from government of India. So for that, you need to know actually, like what is the formula that government of India uses, and what has been the trend in the past, which government gets maximum revenue, whether there is a discrepancy between states. So what other arguments you can provide, and it is basically the finance department very frequently they have to do. So finance secretary always looks for smart officers around him who can prepare such a document so that can be forwarded to government of India. And that is why people who are comfortable in doing that, they always remain posted in the budget and in the finance department in secretariat. Okay? And otherwise you will have to work in the field. Of course, I am not saying that that is not important. Those are also important. But as an officer of the state, like I have heard also that your secretary is asking to go through IMF website and attend those lectures. Yes, you have to do that. Then only you can know what is happening around the world. Okay? And so that should also happen in Odisha. So that, of course, I can tell you that actually, since I work in the Finance Commission, I know that Odisha's finance department, for that reason, our bureaucrats are much smarter than many other states. Okay, so that's a good thing, actually. Compared to many other states, Odisha's financial documents and preparation is good. But still, in some other cases, we also find that we are not able to spend a lot of money for various reasons. And sometimes we also fail to put strong demand actually on the government of India, and we also lose a lot of revenue due to that. Okay? So if you have analytical bent of mind, and then you can help the state government. Doesn't matter actually who is ruling. political party is not the concern. Our concern is government. Okay, so, and you are all government employees. So yeah, that will help you basically to create the good documents. That's all.
Sir, can you please?
Yeah, somebody is asking any question.
Yes, sir. Can you please say that site name again? What you said to look for?
India Public Finance Statistics.
Okay, sir.
Just
Thank you, sir.
make a Google search, India Public Finance Statistics, and check it for the latest year. For every year, Finance Ministry publishes this document. This is a very rich document, and for any kind of debate on the transfer of resources from the government of India to state, this is the authentic document. See, RBI also provides information, but RBI uses this information. So the primary source is this, India Public Finance Statistics.
Okay, sir. Yeah. Thank you, sir.
So then I will stop here. I have another meeting.